Ladies and gentlemen, this is very interesting. It seems, well, actually, you could look at Lincoln Project Open Secrets Senate Majority PAC, almost $2 million. So $1,900,000 was given by Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer and Kristen Gillibrand run the Senate Majority PAC. And you can look at even Mitt Romney's firm, old firm, gave hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you could see all the people. There's 50 donors here. Some names you might recognize. Some giant corporations. And it's just really interesting. Why is it that Chuck Schumer gave $2 million to the Lincoln Project? They raised, $90 million. Lincoln Project now, if you look at the Associated Press, of the $90 million Lincoln Project has raised, more than $50 million has gone to firms controlled by the group's leaders. So they're in a huge pile of bandini. They're not doing well. And it's interesting because President Trump was in the news and in the public eye spotlight for decades. Never went to prison or never was charged or indicted, or you never heard of a scandal prior to him becoming president. You never heard of, he went bankrupt, but so what? They make a big deal about that, but I mean, it's not like he's Anthony Weiner or Bill and Hillary Clinton, who run a scam and racket of a philanthropic organization and just, funnel money in. And you can see in the campaign emails, there's a Bill Clinton Inc. So they find legal ways to enrich themselves. They profit from philanthropic organizations, or they profit, you can look at Biden and his son Caligula. There are emails that show pay-to-play schemes where people are just making money through either deceiving donors or giving the impression, or actually giving favors, allowing people to gain access to the highest levels of the United States government, or giving people the impression that they'll be able to gain access. So, 85 donors give $156 million, something like that, to the Clinton Foundation. 85 of those donors, Madam Secretary meets. You have emails from Biden's son. The Biden son received, thank you for allowing us to meet your father. Hopefully you can use your influence on behalf of the company. 10% goes to you-know-who, the big man, which they're referring to Biden. And these are emails that if it was Trump's son, if it was Eric Trump Jr., Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, you better believe that the FBI would look into. And now the federal government is still investigating Biden's son. And they impeached Trump for what the federal government is doing right now. So, I mean, the loudest voices against Trump have been the most corrupt. This is corruption. You're talking about a salacious a scandal where one of the founders engaged in the most depraved, despicable, disgusting behavior. They served as the moral foundation against President Trump. The money trail points to a whole lot of questions. And they're now, it's really an FBI reportedly investigating Lincoln Project co-founder. So now you have the FBI investigating allegations against Lincoln Project. So now the FBI is investigating the Lincoln Project. And they're the ones who pushed the FBI, or I should say they're the ones who reveled and just applauded all of this. the nonsense regarding President Trump and Russia, hit subscribe to this channel right this second. I told you for a long time I was opposed to the Lincoln Project. That's one of the main reasons I voted for President Trump. For years I've been saying, if the Lincoln Project is in one political party, I will vote for the other. I will vote against them. I will vote for anyone. I will vote for anyone who opposes the Lincoln Project. Hit subscribe to this channel. Go to hagoodman.com. You can read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post Salon, The Jerusalem Post. And if you want to support my voice long term, my Patreon is below. But ladies and gentlemen, FBI investigating allegations against Lincoln Project co-founder John Weaver. According to sources were asked if Weaver ever behaved inappropriately. Wow. So you have the FBI investigating. You have Lincoln Project with $90 million raised, $50 million pocketed. Of the $90 million Lincoln Project has raised, more than $50 million has gone to firms controlled by the group's leaders. So a political action committee, you're not supposed to pocket the money. And it's interesting because Bill Kristol, who has a different organization, but basically one of the neoconservatives, one of the people who advocated the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, just like Rick Wilson and just like Steve Schmidt and just like Weaver and the Lincoln Project people and Conway, he kept saying, well, Jim Jordan, what did Jim Jordan know about a scandal that took place in one of the universities that he coached at? Well, what did Bill Kristol know about what Weaver is now very likely or possibly going to prison for? Okay. There's never been any link between Jim Jordan and any criminal activity. Oh, there's definitely a link. There's definitely a link between the Lincoln Project and its the Lincoln Project co-founder and other co-founders of the Lincoln Project, and perhaps other people who worked alongside the Lincoln Project to undermine and oust President Trump. This was the moral foundation. Don't you understand? Democrats were looking anywhere because, like, you see what's taking place. Deputy press secretary gone. Okay, acquittal of President Trump. Lincoln Project pretty much dissolved, turned into dust. This is a terrible week for Democrats. Why? And you're going to see like, what is the foundation of contempt and vitriol against Trump? It's just the fact that they weren't in power. It had nothing to, like, I've been critical of President Trump's tweets, and it's true, he needs to learn from certain mistakes. He shouldn't have insulted LeBron James. He shouldn't have insulted NFL athletes. He should have utilized Twitter, or at least he should have tried to foster a national dialogue and discourse and debate on things instead of going after certain people. It didn't help him at all. It didn't help the country. But at the end of the day, Trump allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever. He presided over the Abraham Accords, peace between Israel, UAE, Bahrain, Morocco. He was the first president to step foot in North Korea and begin détente between North and South Korea, hopefully a roadmap towards peace. You have Israel and South Korea asking Biden's administration to continue Trump's foreign policy because it was successful. President Trump was the first president to sign an executive order combating anti-Semitism on college campuses using the definition from the IHRA. I can't even say the entire name of the organization because of the YouTube algorithm. But Where did that $50 million go? I mean, it was lucrative. People have said to me, or people have said of me, oh, yes, he became a Trump supporter because of, for money. It's like, no, that's, the money is despising Trump. Actually, supporting President Trump, you're doing so on principle. Because you want to end the counterinsurgency conflicts. You want to end the never-ending wars that the Lincoln Project got this country into. And, like, my channel would be at 600,000 viewers now, subscribers. If I just said, oh, you know, Hillary Clinton's the best, and Trump worked with Russia, and he's so horrible, and this and that, the same things that everybody else said about Trump. The media, he had 92% negative media coverage. It was very easy to just simply, it took, the money is spewing contempt against Trump. Look at how much money the Lincoln Project is despised even within the Republican Party, and they got $90 million, $2 million from Chuck Schumer. So Chuck Schumer gave almost $2 million to the Lincoln Project, and now the Lincoln Project's being investigated by the FBI, one of its founders. And of course, it's interesting, people aren't going to ask, well, why did what link does Schumer have with Weaver? I mean, this is, and it's like, how many people knew? How many people knew? That's the question also, like, how many people knew? And how many people just swept it under the rug because they just wanted to go after Trump? These are the people who claim that Trump is immoral. He's a despot. He's cruel. I mean, they're so oblivious. They're so like they've taken his personality. President Trump's personality was so divisive, or I should say, it wasn't his personality that was divisive. What Democrats did is that they sensationalized everything. They amplified and reacted in such a hysterical and apoplectic and, like they were so offended. And granted, a lot of it was like just theatrics, but President Trump fed them the attitude and the personality they wanted. And in doing so, from Trump's vantage point, he said, yeah, the Lincoln Project people, they're all depraved, and they're the ones who got us into Iraq and Afghanistan. They're the ones who pushed for never-ending military conflict and counterinsurgency conflicts. And, President Trump probably said, why should I even try to promote a dialogue with a political party that has the Lincoln Project embedded within them? But those people were able to gain so much money from creating this world where Trump is a despot. And they were retweeted, and they were listened to, and they were given money from the Democrats, propped them up, and now Democrats are just kicking them out of their place. So you have these people who were once Republicans. These are Bush-era Republicans. These are Bush-era Republicans. The most despicable types, the most despicable political operatives you could ever imagine. Going after veterans, more so. Like, they say that Trump went after McCain, but it's like, the Democrats actually said worse about John McCain in 2008. Or I should say Democratic publications. And that's not good, but Trump did nothing compared to what, who was it, Wilson of Lincoln Project, who went after Max Cleland, Senator Max Cleland, a triple amputee Vietnam veteran, war hero, or Vietnam veteran and hero, because he spoke out and he was courageous and noble. Max Cleland was very noble in speaking out against Iraq and against Bush's foreign policy. And Lincoln Project people had the audacity to paint him as disloyal and unpatriotic. Can you believe that? Oh, yeah, well, that's what happened. These are the people that, like, and the Democratic Party is hilarious because, and the liberal Democrats, many of them are hilarious because they say, well, look, even the Republicans don't like Trump. It's like, President Trump annihilated, when he was candidate, annihilated Jeb Bush. It took like 2 seconds for him to just obliterate Jeb Bush. Because Jeb had a tough time disavowing or condemning his maniacal brother's foreign policy. So, it's really interesting to see this, like, it's really interesting to see a political organization that enriched itself from gullible Democrats. And you could say, well, you know, it worked because Trump's no longer president. Yeah, but the Lincoln Project didn't have that much influence. They didn't have that much. Liberal Democrats didn't care what they didn't really. The liberal Democrats who cared what they said were just doing so because they thought they were under the impression that, you know, Republicans cared what they, about the ads, and Republicans didn't. President Trump still to this day has an 80 to 90% approval rating. And so where are these people now going to be, where are they going to be influential? And of course, one of them, Steve Schmidt, before he resigned, he was on Bill Maher. And it's like, and just like, imagine if Republicans had this type of organization within their political party. I mean, they did. These are Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld people. The Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld George W. Bush was the absolute worst president we've ever had, by far. By far. And it's interesting because Democrats don't realize, like, you see George W. Bush on Jimmy Kimmel, and, you know, his, like, the Democratic Party actually has a positive favorability, a positive view of George W. Bush because they don't care about never-ending wars. They don't care. They care about tweets. But Twitter didn't exist back then. I mean, honestly, thank God, because could you imagine? Twitter's the absolute worst platform. Thank God. I don't have a Twitter account. I haven't had a Twitter account for over 2 years. But it's a platform that allows organizations like this organization to flourish. And that should tell you all you need to know. Give me your thoughts below. I should be back in about an hour and a half. Thanks, everybody. Hit